All right, let's just get right into it. For literally thousands of years, the Great Pyramid of Giza has kept its secrets locked up tight. We know who built it, we have a good idea of when, but the one question that has just stumped everybody, from archaeologists to engineers, is how? Well, today we're going to dig into a new theory that flips everything we thought we knew completely on its head. What if the evidence we've all been searching for isn't actually missing? What if it's been staring us in the face this entire time and we've just been looking at it the wrong way? This one single idea from a pretty obsessive researcher reframes the entire mystery. The idea is this: the pyramids weren't built up, they were carved down. Now, before we get into the how, we really have to wrap our minds around the when. I mean, the scale of time here is just staggering. You've probably heard this before, but it's so wild it's worth repeating. Cleopatra lived closer in time to the release of the first iPhone than she did to the construction of the Great Pyramid. Think about that. The ancient Romans were tourists at these things, viewing them as ancient wonders, kind of like how we tour the Colosseum today. And it really, truly is a wonder. When you start to look at the raw numbers, the word impossible starts to feel less like an exaggeration and more like, well, just a simple statement of fact. Okay, let's just try to process this for a second. 2.3 million blocks of stone, many of them weighing more than a full-grown elephant, and they were quarried and moved with this unbelievable efficiency for more than a decade. I mean, the logistics alone are just absolutely mind-boggling. And you know, it's not just the sheer scale of it, it's the insane accuracy. The base is a near-perfect square, off by just a few centimeters. The whole thing is aligned to true north with an accuracy that honestly we'd struggle with today without GPS and lasers. And they pulled all of this off, as far as we can tell, using just the stars, some simple tools, and an absolutely incredible command of geometry. Okay, so here is where the mystery really deepens. The ancient Egyptians were meticulous record keepers. I mean, we have a 4,500-year-old logbook from a site manager named Mir, detailing how his crew boated limestone over to the site. We know about the workers' bakeries, their medical care, their payroll. But the one thing that is completely, totally missing? The blueprints. The actual construction plans. It's almost as if they vanished by design. So with no instruction manual to go by, we've had to come up with our own theories. And there are a lot of them. But the two most popular ideas, the ones you probably learned about in school, well, they run into some pretty serious, evidence-based problems. So first up, you've got the giant external ramp theory. The problem is, to get a slope gentle enough for workers to haul these multi-ton blocks, the ramp would need to be over a mile long and would have used more stone than the pyramid itself. And the real fatal flaw? There is zero archaeological evidence that this colossal structure ever even existed. Then you have the idea of an internal spiraling ramp. It's a clever idea, but in 2015, a muon scan, which is basically a giant CT scan for buildings, found no trace of any continuous spiral. Plus, a ramp like that would completely block the corners, making it impossible to check those razor-precise angles as they built their way up. So if the main ramp theories have these massive critical flaws, it just brings us right back to that central question. Where did all the evidence go? What if it didn't just disappear over time? What if it was removed on purpose? And what if we've been asking the wrong question this whole time? And this is where our story takes a really interesting turn. It starts with an idea from a researcher named Hooni Choi, who spent a solid decade obsessively modeling every single measurable stone at Giza, not just to solve one pyramid, but to try and understand the entire system that could produce all of them. So here's the absolute core of it. The unbuilt theory suggests that the Egyptians started with a much larger, rougher structure and then literally carved it down into the final perfect pyramid shape. And this means all that construction evidence, the ramps, the platforms, it wasn't lost to the sands of time. It was intentionally cannibalized and reused in the next phase of the project. Now, what's so fascinating about this is how this theory elegantly solves what is by far the single hardest part of the whole construction process: getting that perfect, pointed top, the apex. Let's just break it down. Step 1. You find a natural hill on the plateau and carve it into terraces to create a stable base. Step 2. You overbuild a huge, rough, trapezoid-shaped mass on top of it, with ramps built right in. Now that trapezoid shape is key. It gives you a wide, stable working platform at the very top. From there, you just carve downwards, making sure your angle is perfect all the way. You're not struggling to make two lines meet at a tiny point in the sky. You're just revealing a shape that's already there. And finally, all that extra stone you carve away, you repurpose it for the next pyramid in the complex. And the math on this is what makes it so incredibly brilliant. You start with an initial mass of around 8 million tons. The final pyramid is 6 million. That leaves 2 million tons of perfectly good, pre-quarried stone just waiting for the next project. See, it's not a single build. It's a closed-loop construction engine where absolutely nothing is wasted. You know, this idea of a cannibalizing recycling system isn't just clever engineering. It feels very Egyptian. We know they were master recyclers. They turned broken boats into furniture, and later dynasties literally mined old pyramids for stone to use in their new buildings. A system designed around repurposing materials just fits perfectly with what we know about their entire culture. So, does this new theory prove how the pyramids were built? Well, that brings us to a much, much trickier question. What does the word proof even mean when you're dealing with a 4,500-year-old cold case? So recently, researchers cataloging stones on the neighboring Khafre pyramid found this really strange pattern, these tiny tapered stones that form vertical streams, and they seem to be stitching sections of the masonry together. Now, this suggests that multiple crews were working on the faces at the same time, which would require a wide, stable working deck, exactly what the unbuilt theory provides, and something a single narrow external ramp would make pretty much impossible. Look, in hard science, proof is absolute, right? You run an experiment, someone else repeats it, you get the same result. But in archaeology, you can't exactly rebuild the Great Pyramid as a live experiment, so proof becomes a whole different beast. It's about finding the theory with the most explanatory power, the one that accounts for the most evidence and has the fewest contradictions. It's not about finding the right answer, so much as finding the least wrong answer.
The unbuilt theory is really compelling because it explains the precision, it explains the missing evidence, and it just feels right for the Egyptian culture. But for now, it's still just a theory. And that leads to one final thought. In a world where we can Google just about anything, maybe the power of the pyramids isn't just in how they were built, but in the fact that, after 4,500 years, they still make us wonder. And if we had that definitive answer, would they lose the very mystery that makes them so magnificent?